Well, the Buckeyes have spoken, therefore it's time for us. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, typically on a Wednesday. You can blame me this week. So we're here on a Monday, and we're just happy to have Steve and Tony show up anytime we can get them per week, each week, 308 straight, folks. So take that into consideration. We would love to talk to you later in the show if we can hit our goal in regards to $100 in super chats. We will open up the phone lines in the final 15. So please consider that. And otherwise, a whole lot to talk about concerning what the Buckeyes had to talk about. Of course, Steve Hellwagon right next to me, Bucknuts 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Huddle, and of course, Buckeye Weekly is the podcast that you must get to each and every week or more. Guys, how we doing?
Doing good.
Doing well. 308 shows. Take that, Cal Ripken Jr.
Yeah. 5 years.
That's right. We'll take a victory lap. I guess we can all do that in our own studio setup rooms here one week. I'm sure people would love to see us, high-fiving, I don't know, family members in the house, I guess. I don't know what we would do. If you don't know, look it up. Cal Ripken, circa 1995?
Yeah.
Broken? 94, 95?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember which couch I was watching it on, but I was watching it on some couch.
Me as well. Most of America. That's when baseball mattered. 26-32. All right. Well, the Buckeyes, according to you guys, seemed like they spoke for like 308 editions of a podcast. But Steve, we'll start with you in regards to, if I caught you between bites, for the Ryan Day portion of all of this, and I got to plead my ignorance, Ohio State fan, so shame on me, but we'll catch up to it at some point. I had expected to over the weekend, but what was the most poignant out of the national championship head coach?
Yeah, he spoke for about 30 minutes and kind of put a bow on everything that happened, obviously, with the playoff and looking forward obviously for 2025. And because the season went until January the 20th, they were late getting started with winter workouts and will not start spring practice until this coming Monday. Usually they would have started it last Monday, practice for a week, then have spring break this week, then come back and have the last 4 weeks of spring practice after that. Instead, they're going to have their 15 practice sessions sprinkled over those 4 weeks. But, you know, when you think about it, when they got to play essentially an extra game or 3 games from December the 20th when they played Tennessee all the way to January the 20th, or, you know, give or take the days when they played Notre Dame, they had a lot of practices in there. So I think that there has been a lot of football that's been played and practiced by all these guys. And now Coach Day has talked about how they're splitting the team into 3 groups. The group of guys who played a lot of football are probably going to be on a very short play count during spring ball. Then you'll have the guys in the middle group who really need to play a lot of football this spring to get ready to become starters because you have so many open spots. So those guys will get a lot of work. And then the third group is the 21 incoming freshmen, the 5 or 6 transfers from other schools that are on the roster. And those guys will also get a ton of work. He thought with 3 quarterbacks that they would have 3 fields going at some instances with some type of 11 on 11, I presume, on 3 different fields. So that would be pretty amazing if they're able to do that and get all 3 of those quarterbacks, Julian Sayin, Lickett Keenholtz, and Tavian St. Clair, as much work as they possibly can. It seems like Sayin has got the inside track, and he did talk a little bit about Sayin, but obviously also talked about his new hirings with Matt Patricia at defensive coordinator, Billy Fessler being upgraded from a program assistant to the quarterback's coach, and Tyler Bowen becoming the new offensive line coach and run game coordinator to help out Brian Hartline, the new offensive coordinator. So there was a lot there. One of the pointed questions he was asked about Matt Patricia, I think if you go in his Wikipedia, you will note that there were some type of allegations against him made by a I don't know, I guess a partner years ago, sexual assault allegations perhaps. And he said that he was never charged in connection with that incident, and said that Ross Bjork was involved in vetting Matt Patricia and getting to the bottom of where things stood. So, you look at it, so much news came out of that session on Friday, and we're going to continue to report it all this week leading up to the start of practice on Monday.
Tony, the Ryan Day portion of all of this for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to finally get to talk to him about his new hires and why he wanted those guys, and the Matt Patricia thing in terms of how do you know that was him in New England and not just Bill Belichick. He said, well, you talked to a lot of people about that. One of the guys he talked to was former Buckeye Nate Ebner, who played for the Pats back then, and you just talked to as many people about Matt Patricia as possible. But then also you talk to Matt Patricia, and obviously everybody knows he's a really smart guy, and so you see if it fits. And with the melding of the NFL style and college football style, all kind of like the NFL style of football is looking more and more like college football, and the college football playoff and the personnel wise and the acquisition of players is looking more and more like the NFL. You're not so much worried about the NFL coach working in college and the college coach working in the NFL, because it's all looking pretty similar. So he's confident that Patricia will be able to recruit, and we'll get to Patricia later, but he's certainly excited about the possibilities of recruiting for Ohio State. I did ask Day what you're going to do, like what do the reps look like, and as Steve said, they're just going to roll them. They're going to just keep rolling the quarterbacks, and sometimes Julian Sain will be at the ones, the twos, and the threes, just like Will Howard was, so they'll all get their reps. And I think that's fantastic news for Tavian St. Clair, who is going to probably get as many reps this spring as Will Howard did last year. So that's going to be, just based on the numbers, because they had 5 quarterbacks last year in the spring. And there were times where Aaron Noland was not even with the quarterbacks. He was the guy throwing the ball to the running backs when they're working on routes. And so you've got these 3 quarterbacks, and they're all going to be able to work together and just roll. And that's going to be huge for St. Clair. It's going to be great for Lincoln Keenos as well. And in terms of Billy Fessler, like one of the things he told Billy Fessler is just bring value to your position, no matter what your position is. And as the assistant quarterbacks coach, he did that last year, because while Chip Kelly was off doing his coordinator stuff, it was Billy Fessler as the quarterbacks coach. And we'll get to Billy Fessler later on, but just talking with him and about all of the things that he did with the quarterbacks, Day is very confident in him, because one, he coaches quarterbacks the way Day wants, and so that's the biggest qualification you can have. And he didn't have to bring anybody from the outside and teach them how he wanted his quarterbacks taught. Billy Fessler was already there. So I thought that was interesting. And just overall, as I skip through some of these updates, the Tyler Bowen hire, he expects recruiting to pick up greatly, which they need on the offensive line, even though they just lost an Ohio kid to Clemson and Adam Guthrie. But there's still time there. I don't know that they're going to get him back, but it's still early for Tyler Bowen. So don't start, writing him off as a recruiter just yet. I'm not even sure he's moved into his house. But yeah, it was just good to talk to Day about everything, because again, the majority of the beat, the assembled masses of the beat, haven't talked to him since the day after the national championship game.
Did Tyler Bowen in fact speak? He did?
Yes, unfortunately, he spoke at the exact same time as Matt Patricia. So like there were 3 tables on the indoor, and so there were 3 coaches going at the same time. And so I never was over with Tyler Bowen, because I was with Matt Patricia the entire time. So it was like Matt Patricia, I think Tim Walton and Tyler Bowen going on. They were like the first 3 coaches to go. But I have gone through and looked at much of the transcript of Tyler Bowen, and things like that. So I don't know, Steve, were you over there at all with him?
I really was not. Our YouTube page has got, I'm sure yours has it as well. All 11 of the videos, Day and the 10 assistant coaches. I'm sure you guys probably have all the video of all the tables. They had 3 tables going at once with the assistant coaches, and Keenan Bailey was the odd man out who had to stick around after the session to be the 10th guy. 10 divided by 3 is 3.3333333333. So he was the extra guy who, when they did a line change, he was the last guy in. But yeah, it was. I did not participate with Bowen. I was kind of watching more Patricia. And I'll be fascinated to see, one, how he assimilates to college football schematically, also in terms of recruiting. Is this just a one-year thing before he heads back somewhere as an NFL defensive coordinator next year, or what is this going to be? So I guess we'll see how it all plays out. But for him and Bowen, they're going to spend the spring just getting to know, matching numbers with names and that type of thing to be able to coach these players. So I think it's going to be an exciting time, I think. And you have a fresh set of eyes, especially on the offensive line. Maybe he'll have a different idea of how everything should go. If they decide that, their 4 best offensive linemen are Sierraveld, Montgomery, Hinsman, and Shabola, then maybe one of those 4 moves out to tackle. And, they just add whoever is the other tackle, perhaps the transfer Anianwa from Rice or Philip Daniels from Minnesota, or whoever it may be. So I guess we'll just have to wait to see. As Tony said, I don't know that we're going to learn a whole lot position-wise in the first couple of weeks, but maybe by weeks 3 and 4, they'll have a better idea how it could line up.
Yeah, I mean, I posted this on our message board, Buckeye Huddle message board last night. I was told that don't be surprised if Austin Sierraveld opens spring as the left tackle and Ethan Onianwa is over at right tackle. So we'll see. I think that's maybe one of the plans right now. But again, that's going to be fluid throughout spring in terms of moving guys around and seeing what they can handle and what they can't.
All right, folks, point number 1 is I made a decision on the fly here. I didn't want to penalize anybody in particular. So overall, $100, and we go to the phone lines, or in particular, if you want to invest $10 into a super chat and the contribution here for the show, then we will take your call. So that's available as well. All right. Yeah, Patricia's the guy that everybody wants to hear about. He is the one that I would listen to first and foremost, and will. I brought up Bowen for this one point. Virginia Tech, Ohio State, obviously 2 different statuses of college football at this level. However, offensive coordinator versus, now he does, as you alluded to, Tony, he does have the run game coordinator status there. But if anyone asked him, I was just curious about taking, in a sense, a step down from full reign of the offense at a major program.
I think part of this was he's going to be involved in the offense, but it's like, a step down from being the guy, the play caller, the OC, to just an offensive line coach. And I think I can't necessarily talk about his motivation other than it's Ohio State and things weren't going all that great for him at Virginia Tech. So there's kind of the getting out while the getting is good sort of thing. And as I just scroll through some of his answers here to see why, it's like, I don't know that he necessarily got into it, but in terms of why Ryan Day wanted him, it's to bolster Brian Hartline as the first time OC. And so you're adding somebody who's done that before and has been involved in the running game. No, he's not coached the offensive line since 2017, but he's a former offensive lineman himself. He's been tied to the tight ends, which are tied to the offensive line. So like he considers himself an offensive line guy. And so you've got that connection there with Hartline to help him through that. Also the the recruiting is a big aspect of it as well. But I think some of this is just whatever you are at Virginia Tech. If you're the OC, yeah, sure, it's a step down in terms of title, but it's a step up in terms of place. And you go from offensive line coach at Ohio State, you can turn that into something else. But it's also an opportunity to just win, get your name out there for a few years, and who knows what your next step is. But yeah, it is interesting because I'm rambling here because I'm trying to see it. Like, what was did he have any good answers in terms of why he would leave, other than the fact that it's Ohio State and it's the offensive line coach, it's still being involved, and maybe it's just more of a comfort thing because that's what he knows more than the quarterback, even though like he was a quarterback's coach, so it's not like he doesn't know the position. But I'll stop talking now, and maybe Steve will have an answer, because I don't have a great answer as to why would you step down, other than the fact he doesn't consider it a step down, and it's probably also a pay raise.
Well, I got to tell you, are we talking about Tyler Bowen? I was buffering there for just a second. Yeah, I think, coaching at Virginia Tech is very prestigious. No doubt about it. They've got a great football program, and, over the last 30 years have been very competitive. But when you have a chance to come and work at the number one football program in America, which is Ohio State, I think you jump at that. So Ohio State pays well, supports the coaches well, has got every advantage, and is going to compete for national championships, 3 out of every 4 years. So to me, this is the place you want to be if you want to be, considered at the top of your profession. And yeah, is it a trade-off that you're no longer exactly calling plays as you were at Virginia Tech? Possibly, but you're part of something much bigger at Ohio State. You have a chance to put together a team that could go out and compete for a national championship. So to me, I think that there were probably a lot of factors in the decision, and I'm sure he thought it through. But obviously, Ohio State needed the help on the offensive line. And it was just kind of an added bonus, as you laid out there, that Brian Hartline is getting somebody who's been there and done that and can really help him formulate game plans, and on Saturday suggest plays based on what he's seeing with the defense and everything else in terms of the run game, possibly even the pass game. So I think it's a win-win for all involved. Do I think Tyler Bowen is going to be at Ohio State forever? Does he jump off and become, an offensive coordinator at a like school to Ohio State, one of the top 10 programs, possibly? So, I think it is a step up for him in terms of salary, even though he's not a coordinator, and an opportunity for him to make that jump to take the next step in his career. So I just look at it that a win-win for all involved. And again, if Ohio State wins, all these guys will win, improve their station, and we've seen that, and we'll continue to see it.
I got the answer for you here because I finally found it. It's so that he's drawn to the opportunity to coach at Ohio State. For one, it's Ohio State and the prestige is there. It's an attractive destination. And second, he saw it as an opportunity to return to his coaching roots on the offensive line. And you add those things up, and those are good answers in terms of why you leave. It's want to get back to the offensive line. It's Ohio State. You want to win, and so this is an opportunity. And Justin Frye was making $1 million as an offensive line coach, so there's also that possibility in a year or two as well. If he's not doing it already, we won't get the contracts until next month.
Sometimes, folks, it's more convenient to simply listen to us, and you can do that at your favorite audio platform, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Buckeyes Live is right there. Again, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and a few others of note. All right, Matt Patricia. Okay, I would be and will be, when I look at this, as much intrigued by the media's questioning of him. I'm not going to call it a controversial hire. That would be leaning a little heavy, but a questionable hire. There were questions concerning whether he was the right guy for the job. It was not a quote unquote slam dunk hire. at least for Buckeye fans, media, etc. So I'll start out with that. Did there seem to be a bit of pessimism in the air, or just we want to really get at this in terms of his qualifications and how he represents his resume and his qualifications?
Well, it was an interesting hire because like he was not on any really initial early lists, and then all people think about Matt Patricia anymore is the Detroit Lions tenure. And I thought his answer on the Lions situation was really interesting because he talked about when he was with New England, like they would win the Super Bowl, and then the next year they would lose it, and then they would go on and like win it the next year, whatever. Like every year, every time they lost the Super Bowl, the entire coaching staff would just be like hyper focused on getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it. And that's all they cared about. They didn't care about anything else. It was just getting back to the Super Bowl. And so the year before he left for Detroit, they lost the Super Bowl. So then he gets to Detroit with that same kind of mindset as, this first introduction to the Lions is like, we've got to win the Super Bowl. We've got to, like that's how he was. That's what his mentality was. And he said it was absolutely the wrong way to approach the job because this wasn't the New England Patriots you were taking over. And he didn't really give the program, the franchise, the team, the players an opportunity to know them as they are. And he was focused on, he was still in the Patriots mindset, and he never got out of that. And he admitted that was the wrong way to be. And, you talk to people from Detroit and it's like, he was a miserable person. You talked to him last week and this guy seemed like the happiest guy in the room to be at Ohio State. So yeah, I can believe the people in Detroit were not happy with him and will continue to speak badly about him. But I think he said like, I'm not that same guy. And Ryan Day has said that. So, I thought he was interesting. He was like happy to meet people. Not that he's going to remember everybody's names, but he was open and he was forthcoming. And, he certainly gives longer answers than Jim Knowles. So that's good for the media guys.
I would think that maybe the percentage of people that are miserable in Detroit just overall is fairly high.
God bless. What an awful, miserable, awful, dire. I only go to Michigan in the wintertime, like we went to Michigan State early in the season and it wasn't that bad, but usually I'm there in November, December, January, or February for football and basketball. And it just, the words dire, cold, awful, just desperate, it's just, the weather there is so much different than the weather in Ohio, and we're only a couple 100 miles away. I mean, you cross over into Michigan and, the roads aren't very good. And, there's ice and snow on the road. You come into Ohio, everything's perfect and taken care of. So yeah, it's like night and day, really.
We had this in Ohio and perhaps other areas of the Midwest this past weekend, a dusty rain where dust storm from Texas got up into the atmosphere and the rain and wind blew it over. And then it just brought down this dirty snow water. Yeah. Like all over Ohio. And that's just kind of how I think we all envision Michigan and the roads there and the towns there. So that's basically what it was. No offense.
All right, folks, we will remind you that you can get your business, your product, your service, your personal brand. Keep that in mind these days. Personal brands at the next level by partnering with us here at the Voice of College Football. As you can see, Win Agency is our most recent partner and still partnering with us through the off season. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market, whatever that may be. Contact myself and the rest of the crew here at the Voice of College Football at sponsorships@vocfp.com. That would be sponsorships@vocfb.com. There we go. Yeah. So anything else regarding Matt Patricia's conversation that stands out?
Well, just the multiple nature of the defense. Like he is the only new guy. So this is not just going to be Matt Patricia's defense. they'll all work together. They'll continue to move more towards a multiple defensive line. Three front, four guys. Like they were starting to do that last year, and I thought it was interesting. James Laurinaitis said that when they hired Matt Patricia, the first player that he thought of about that hire was C.J. Hicks, because C.J. Hicks is now going to be playing defensive end, moving from linebacker to play defensive end and be that edge rusher that he's wanted to be. And I think we saw last year that linebacker just wasn't going to work out for him. So this is an opportunity for him to do something that he wants to do. So anytime they move players positionally, it's always because a player is willing to do it. Not only is C.J. Hicks willing to do it, this is not necessarily something they said, hey, would you want to do this? Like he's going to the coach and says, I want to do this. So that also is indicative of how much, the work that he's going to put in to make this work. And honestly, they need defensive ends because they lost 3 from last season.
All right. And then we had an array of players.
No players, all coaches.
Oh, these were all coaches.
Yeah, we got all of the coaches.
Okay.
All 10 assistants and the head coach. So
yeah, I guess that makes sense. Okay. All right, Steve. We'll pick off your next favorite or most intriguing. Don't want to hold you guys down to anything in particular.
I listened in on Larry Johnson quite a bit. I wrote a story about Larry Johnson, and he discussed C.J. Hicks moving to defensive end. Now he is, I wrote, you say this, only 240 pounds. So, how much weight is he going to pack on? How exactly is he going to go about, rushing the passer and being an impact defensive end? Obviously, they've got Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, who Larry Johnson is hoping that those guys will take the next step. And, you'd say replace JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer in some way in terms of production. But, that'll be hard to do. Obviously, those guys were outstanding, particularly in the last 6 or 7 games of the season. They just dominated a lot of the opponents that they played. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But him talking about C.J. Hicks was very good. He talked about a couple of the younger guys, Jason Moore and also Will Smith. Will Smith just under 300 pounds. And Jason Moore is right around 300 pounds. There are third-year sophomores whose time has kind of come. I mean, those guys need to push Caden McDonald, whoever is going to start there at defensive tackle, and really kind of push those guys and get their way into the 2 deep at this point. So we'll see how that all kind of comes around in the wash. And then, of course, he was also asked, was there any veracity to all the rumors and innuendo that was out there for the last couple of years that there was a rift between himself and Jim Knowles as the defensive coordinator? And he did everything he could to kind of debunk that myth. And obviously it would look bad on Larry Johnson if he were to say, yeah, I hated that bleep bleep because he wanted to do this. He wanted to play that jack defensive end or whatever that was, and wanted to do this and wanted to do that with the scheme. And, here's Larry would have, figured he was the underling. He needed to take his marching orders from Jim Knowles. And so he said, no, we just had some different philosophies and we worked together and kumbaya, and it was all good. So, that was kind of the upshot of that.
Well, I think we will go to Brian Hartline with a new assignment as he is fully integrated into his spot with some help from the new offensive line coach.
And, Ryan Day Ryan Day keeps saying like Brian Hartline is going to be the best coordinator in the nation. And, he's ready to be calling plays. And because he's been on the headsets the entire time, he gives feedback these past 3 years, and so he's confident there. And with Hartline, he's still getting questions. He's still going to be around the receivers, like he's still going to be very involved there. There is still a question of whether he's going to be upstairs or downstairs for the actual on field during the games. Where are you calling plays from? So they still have to figure that out. Chip Kelly always liked being on the field because one, he was like the head coach, so he had to be. But he was upstairs last year in the press box calling plays. That was the first time he'd been upstairs calling plays since he was an offensive coordinator for at Oregon way back when. So where will Brian Hartline be? And if he is upstairs, then you've got Devin Jordan downstairs working with the receivers on the sideline. So that's all yet to be decided. His fellow coaches on the offensive side, speak very highly of Hartline and his the way he works and his understanding of the offense and his creativity. So this is another one where you get some new eyes on things, and he's been around some good coaches, and so he's learned. You've been around Urban Meyer, you've been around Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. Like, those are all good offensive minds, great offensive minds. So you're going to pick up some good things. And so the expectations are pretty good. Now, he's still dealing with a brand new quarterback. So, he can be a great offensive mind, but you can only do what the offense can do with the skill that you've got. And I think there's plenty of talent, but it's still going to be a first-time starting quarterback. So what it looks like in August or September, it's going to look better in November and December. It's just, there may be some growing pains in there.
Yeah, I look at it, and he's going to be a guy juggling a lot of things. He's got the wide receiver group, although he's got former Ohio State player Devin Jordan, who helps him out quite a bit with coaching the wide receivers. He's got the play calling, the wide receivers, putting the game plans together, working with the staff. He admits this will be much different than it was 2 years ago when Ryan Day was still calling the plays. Now it's on Brian Hartline to have those in-game responsibilities. He was asked about Jeremiah Smith, the great year he had, what they can do to have his second year be better than his first year. And it's a challenge, I think, for all involved, particularly with a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator and, different people in different roles. Is Jeremiah Smith going to produce at the same level that he did this past year? A couple of the up-and-coming guys, Brandon Ennis has kind of scratched the surface the last couple of years at wide receiver, what he can do, hoping to get more production out of him, and maybe he'll lock down that job that Emeka Egbuka had as a wide receiver. And Mylan Graham, a big-timer in the 2024 class, national top 50 prospect out of Fort Wayne, Indiana area, New Haven High School, I believe, over there. He redshirted this past year, and now he'll get a chance as well to kind of crack that top 3 or 4 wide receiver rotation. So he's got a lot of irons in the fire there, Mr. Hartline does, but it sounds like he is ready to accept this challenge. You think about it, they drafted him, back in, 2018, when everything went sideways with Zach Smith and Urban Meyer. He was upgraded from a program assistant to a full-time wide receivers coach, and he took to it like a duck to water, basically. And they've had one great wide receiver group out after another. And now, you lose a guy like Egbuka, you got to replace him. And you got to help Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith reach their next step in their development as well. So this guy's got a lot going on this year, the most responsibility he's ever really been handed as an assistant coach, and only in his, whatever that would be, 18 to 25, 6th, 7th, 8th year, whatever this is. And he's still learning the job as he goes. So we'll see. Obviously, how that goes this coming year.
Well, and even before 18, when he came in at the end of the 2016 season to work scout team wide receiver in preparation for the bowl game against Clemson, and then was just a volunteer intern type the following year in 2017. Like the rise from the way he started, to go from scholarship receiver to NFL receiver to retired NFL receiver to scout team Ohio State receiver again in 2016 for the bowl game, and then just continue to make the rise. And again, this was something that Ohio State needed to do if they wanted to keep him, but also something that clearly Ryan Day wanted to do, not just to keep him, but because he believes in him, because they want to keep this thing going, and Ryan Day is not going to do something that he thinks is going to work the opposite of that. With Billy Fessler, I talked to him quite a bit as well. And I just mentioned that Brian Hartline grew up with all of these great offensive coaches. Billy Fessler has been in coaching for about, I don't know, 6 years or so, 6, 7 years. And like his coaches have been Joe Moorhead, who is, I think, a fantastic college offensive mind, Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. Like these are the guys that he's learned from offensive football. And talking to Keenan Bailey about Billy Fessler, and he's like his mind, like during COVID they roomed together, and then when the season shut down, it was basically just all they did was what they call, I think they called it like football school, and they just spent all day talking about football. And he's like, I learned way more from Billy Fessler than he ever learned from me. And Will Howard said it recently, that if Billy Fessler wouldn't have gotten the job, he would have had words with Ryan Day, semi-jokingly. But Will Howard talked about Billy Fessler, like every game week, those two would go take a walk and talk about all of the scenarios that Will Howard could run into and what he needs to do, and how he would need to operate with all of these variables. And so again, like I said earlier, Billy Fessler coaches quarterbacks like Ryan Day wants them coached. So he seems to be a pretty bright star. I think one of the interesting things that's going to happen in a couple of years, where you've got this former Penn State quarterback in Billy Fessler, who's a rising star. You've got a former Ohio State quarterback, JT Barrett, who is a rising star in the coaching ranks. What happens if JT Barrett ends up at Penn State? And what happens, you got Billy Fessler still at Ohio State. At some point, will they make a trade for each other so that they can each come back home with these two coveted offensive minds? And then the glass breaks, and by God, that's Kenny Guyton's music. And now what happens? Who is also back to coaching quarterbacks in college football. So a lot of it just young coaches was a theme of the day for the Ohio State staff as well. When you look at what Tyler Bowen is 35, Keenan Bailey, I'm not even sure if he's 30 yet. Billy Fessler is in his 20s. Like a very, very young staff overall, and so it's one that can grow and relate to the young players, as the olds would say.
And of course, we've got an addition at the running back spot with Carlos Lachlan. So how is he sizing up the running back competition?
Well, I think he's all in on James Peoples, for one, and could not speak highly enough about him. He's taking a leadership role, even with CJ Donaldson coming in from West Virginia. He said Donaldson's down to about 230 from 238. They wanted him to lose some weight to get him faster and quicker. He also mentioned Bo Jackson's up to about 220 right now. So if you want to buy stock, do it in James Peoples and Bo Jackson. And Carlos Lachlan is always going to be confident in his room. He's always going to talk about how well he's going to get them prepared. And based on his first year last year, like I don't know how you can argue against that, because sure, they had some very talented running backs in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, but those guys stepped up and they produced, and they protected the ball. I think Judkins had one fumble in the Oregon game, the first Oregon game. They protected the quarterback. They caught the ball. They were all well-rounded. And so you're losing 7,500 career rushing yards from those two guys, and you have to replace them with a transfer and some guys that haven't yet done it. But the confidence in James Peoples right now, that the expectations and the confidence that the coaches and teammates have in James Peoples right now, I don't really have a ton of doubts about the running backs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there were a lot of positive things said about James Peoples. Carlos Lachlan said he's not just going to hand him the job, however, that he's got to go out this spring and earn it. And I think it does help to have a veteran like CJ Donaldson, who's also there to kind of bridge the gap. So I think you got a lot of positive things going on there. Sam Williams-Dixon obviously considered a transfer, was in the portal for a brief time and decided to rescind that and came back to Ohio State. Probably some assurances from Carlos Lachlan that he'll get a fair shot at some playing time this year after redshirting this past year. And so you've got several guys there that really are going to push. And we'll see this spring if anybody can take hold of that job. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Peoples has probably the highest upside of everybody, but again, don't count anybody out in this race. I think it's going to be a fun one to watch this spring and see who can make the most plays at that position. As Tony said, it's more than just running the football; it's also pass protection. And it's also catching the ball out of the backfield, which will be so critical with a young quarterback to have somebody coming out of the backfield that you can dump it off to and get a quick 5-6 yards on first down if that's what you're left with. Make a positive play out of nothing a lot of times with those passes to the running back. So I'm interested and excited to see how those guys come along.
Yeah, and as Lisa said, that he wants his top 4 or 5 guys involved in special teams. If you can't get involved in special teams, then how can I trust you to play? And that's that was something that Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, like that's football 101 basically. Like if I can't trust you on special teams, how can I trust to hand you the ball? So whether that's kickoff coverage or whatever, punt protection, the thing that Ohio State always shows to all of these young guys when they're talking about special teams is Ezekiel Elliott as a true freshman running down the field and covering kicks, and Terry McLaurin as a punt gunner. Like they put their best players out there. Chris Olave would do it as well. So it's like nobody is above playing on special teams because it's very, very important to programs that take it seriously.
No doubt.
The voice of college football is now on Instagram. So check us out right there. And we are posting each and every day at least one post with all sorts of nuggets, rankings, ratings, breaking news, and such. So again, if you're on Instagram, give us a look at the VOCFB, and we're on Instagram. Yeah, as Lisa notes there in the chat, also spring practice gets underway in about a week.
A week from today. We do not have our schedule yet, but once we get it, Mark, we'll start scheduling shows because who knows when we're going to be out there with this new schedule. Looking forward to it. We'll get the roster here in maybe a week as well, and we'll find out who's ballooned up in weight and who's lost weight and who's taller and who's shorter and all of those good things. New numbers. It's very much like Steve Martin in The Jerk when the new phone book would come out. And, he'd get all excited. That's how I am with the new roster every spring.
Whew, that's a reference going back. Okay, Steve, you've got a Big Ten tournament to cover this weekend.
I know, how exciting. Buckeyes did not finish on a high note. They had a 10-point lead in the second half and snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, unfortunately, there at Indiana. And I think that would have been a game that would have put them in the NCAA tournament, 17-14, 9-11 in the Big Ten. They're still on that bubble. Some people have them first 4 out. Some of them have last 4 in. I wouldn't honestly mind last 4 in and go experience that first 4 over in Dayton that everybody raves about. But this is not turning out to be a banner year for Ohio State basketball, and it's probably been circling that way for a few weeks. But maybe they can resurrect something here at the end with a win or two. They'll play Iowa 6 p.m. Wednesday. If they win that, they'll play Illinois 6:30 p.m. Thursday. And if they get a win or two, maybe they can still squeeze into the NCAA one way or the other. But again, going back to Indiana for the 3rd time in 3 weeks, and for the Combine, and then the Indiana game Saturday, and now going back for the Big Ten tournament this weekend. So really looking forward to it.
Doug says they don't deserve to be in, but I don't believe that the season is over quite yet. So
yeah, we don't know. We don't know yet. I mean, let's let it play out. I mean, I guess it's a really soft bubble, and there's not a lot of teams that deserve it. So
deserves got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, Ohio State's got 6 quad 1 wins. There's 20 schools with more quad 1 wins than Ohio State. So in several of those will be automatic berths. So when you think about it in terms of the at-large pool, they're going to be like 13th, 14th, 15th in that pool among schools with quad 1 wins. I mean, and you're going to have 30 some at-large schools. So I think there's a place for them in there somewhere. It's just, how it shakes out.
Tony, what's going on at BuckeyeHuddle.com and your podcast, Buckeye Weekly?
Yeah, working on some positional previews. Just dropped the cornerbacks. Have already done the quarterbacks and the safeties at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So you can find that there. And also writing up stories from talking to the coaches. Wrote about CJ Hicks the other day. Just like I think everybody on the beat wrote about CJ Hicks. So everybody had to get that out there and get that known. And of course, the Buckeye Weekly podcast. We did do a live show after the coaches. So that's the most recent show. We'll be putting out one tomorrow. We'll be putting out 2 or 3 this week, talking about clearly spring and some preview aspects of it. I haven't really exactly decided what we're going to talk about, but it'll be about the Ohio State football team.
Do you have a most important camp for anyone in particular?
That was one of the things that we that was like a recent show we did. And the first player that I mentioned that I went with was Julian Sand on offense, because he is the favorite. So you better operate like it. And if you're not, you don't want to start losing ground right away in the spring. So I think this is a huge opportunity for him to gain ground and to make his mark, because they're going to get so many reps. So he's going to have an opportunity to just show and reiterate what everybody already knows about him. So you don't want to see any step back. So I think that's one for me. Also, like a Mylan Graham could step up. Carnell Tate is not going to be practicing much. Jeremiah Smith is not going to be practicing much. So those 2 outside guys aren't going to really be out there all that much. So this is an opportunity for Mylan Graham to establish himself and maybe move up to, being like that 4th guy, but not just the 4th guy who actually plays and maybe plays as much, or probably would want to play more than Brandon Ennis did last year as that 4th guy. Not that Mylan Graham would be in the slot, but just having a 4th guy that can come in, because Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate can both play the slot. They don't need Mylan Graham to do that, but I think this is a big one for him. And then anybody on the offense you want to throw in there, yes, it's big for them as well. The offensive line, rather.
Steve, any thoughts on anyone that needs to step up, whether that's a young player or a guy that's been around? Those guys aren't as common as they used to be, because they usually leave or one way or the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of players on the spot. Arvell Reese, I think at linebacker, needs to show he's an every down player. Jermaine Matthews at corner needs to show he's an every down player. Up front on the defensive line, everybody wants to anoint certain guys, Edric Houston, Caden McDonald, whoever it may be. Well, during this next 4 weeks, you have to go out there on a day-by-day basis and have stack one good practice day on top of another, and show the coaches that you're consistently one of the best 11 players on defense, and that's how you win a job. So to me, all those guys we talked about, plus Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, CJ Hicks moving to defensive end, they're all under a microscope this spring to show that they can do it over the course of time, which is the ultimate thing. Everybody can have one great day or one great game, but obviously the coaches are going to trust the people who are consistently the best. And I don't think playing time happens by any type of an accident. I think it's the guys who the coaches know and believe are the best players. So offensive line, there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching done. As he said, Sierraveld possibly tackle, possibly guard. You never know where he's going to end up. And again, get the best 5 guys on the offensive line together, build that cohesive unit, and go out and whip people. That's what this whole thing's all about. So that's what we want to see this spring, is that unit continue to grow and build. James Peoples, obviously, same thing. Mylan Graham and Brandon Ennis, same thing. You need to go out. You want to be an every down player. You need to go out and earn it. And I think that's what a lot of these guys are going to try and do this spring.
Steve at Bucknuts, everyone, with the basketball roundup, specifically this weekend. And again, Tony Gerderman at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. Be looking out for those. You might as well just make the search in the search bar as soon as you get off here to catch all the latest. Guys, we appreciate it. We will get back together sometime next week. And that's why you got to subscribe, folks. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. And we will see everybody back here next week.
Yep.